legally armed Americans are generally a very proud group of people. One of the main reasons why is because, generally speaking, most legally armed Americans get up every morning, they work hard for their money, and they take a little bit of time figuring out how they're going to spend those hard-earned dollars. So whenever a decision is made to buy a firearm or a firearm-related product, typically speaking, a lot of thought goes into that, a lot of Googling, a lot of reading forums, a lot of looking at YouTube to see what the reviews show and things like that. A lot of research in general goes into what you're doing as far as spending those hard-earned dollars. Now, what we're going to be doing here at Legally Armed America is we've created a brand new show. It's called Gun Money. We're going to be taking similar like products, whether they're pistols, shotguns, rifles, optics, ammo, and we're going to compare items. We're going to compare something on the higher end and compare something with the same type of product on the lower end. Not talking about quality, we're simply talking about the price. Lower end of the price, higher end of the price. Again, that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, and that's the whole point of this show, is to show you that in many cases, a lot of these things just have bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, they perform the same function. We're kicking that off in this show with a 10mm 1911. A lot of people out there make 1911s, tons of 1911s. Not a ton of people make 10mm 1911s. The 10mm is a very unique caliber. There's a lot of history behind it, the FBI and things like that. It was developed some years back. But one of the coolest things I found when talking about the 10mm was that it was actually used in Greenland. They issued this to some of their guys out there, and in the event they came across polar bears, because the 10mm had the stopping power to drop a polar bear. I don't have many pistols in my arsenal besides the 10mm that are capable of doing that. We decided to pick two 10mm on two ends of the spectrum. One is the STI Nitro 10, a very nice looking 10mm. We're comparing that with the Rock Island Armory 10mm, another beautiful gun. What our goal here is not to find one is better than the other, or not to give you a reference to say, hey, this is the gun you ought to go out and buy. It's more just to show you how these two things lay out. You as the viewer are going to be the one that's going to make up in your own mind, without us pushing you into that particular direction, of which one of these guns fits your budget. But Gun Money is going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. Can't wait to get this thing rolling. So guess what? We're going to go ahead and get it rolling. At first glance, these two monsters really lure you in with their good looks. They both have a nice robust finish to them. The Rock Island Armory with a very smooth, clean parkerized finish, very durable, and the STI with a brushed blued finish on the slide and a matte blued finish on the frame. Both of them had a nice set of grips. As you can see, the Rock Island has a set of G10 grips with a little bit more aggressive texture than the slick wood grips that the STI has. The STI slide has some very deep and wide cuts to it to allow for a very good grip on the slide itself when activating the slide, which, by the way, with it being 10mm, has a 26-pound recoil spring. The biggest difference at first glance between these two is the fact that the Rock Island has a full dust cover along with a full Picatinny rail running the full length of it. The STI's hexagonal shaped skeletonized hammer gives you a little bit more space to put your finger on the hammer, whereas the Rock Island skeletonized hammer was a little bit more traditional as what you find on a regular 1911. Now the 10mm has a very violent recoil. Both of these companies did a really good job making adjustments and markings on the frame to account for that, to give you a little bit more grip. Most of these things look like decoration, but in most cases, these are put here to allow you to manage that recoil and get a better grip. Even the front side of the trigger on this STI has a pretty aggressive grip here so that you maintain control on your trigger while you're shooting. The Rock Island had pretty much the same, although a little bit different design. It had these standard cuts on the front strap and what looked like maybe about 25 lines per inch on the back strap, a little bit different cut than what the STI had. Of course, the trigger itself also was prepared similar to the STI, but this one wasn't quite as aggressive, with just vertical lines rather than the actual stippling. And as we stated earlier, with this being a 10mm, the STI has a very strong 25 to 26 pound recoil spring. Very strong on this thing. Whereas the Rock Island had a much lighter recoil spring, maybe between 16 and 18 pounds. That seems like that could be a little bit light for as strong and powerful as this round is in 10mm. The STI came with Heine fixed sights. I was a little bit disappointed that these were fixed sights. The Heine sight itself has a big notch in it to where supposedly you can hook this thing on a gear belt or something like that if you have a hurt support hand and still be able to charge this handle. I don't see that happening with a 26 pound recoil spring though. The sight picture was perfect. Very easy to acquire that front sight with this set of sights. The Rock Island itself had a very nice set of sights on it. It had a rear adjustable sight and a front fiber optic sight. I like fiber optic because it gives you a little bit better chance and quicker pickup of that front sight. Now notice, I did say it had a rear adjustable sight. That's a big plus to me because there's no guarantee these sights are spot on when you get them from the manufacturer. And both of these firearms had bull barrels. I really like that. That tends to aid a little bit in accuracy as far as not having that slot between the barrel and the bushing at the front of the muzzle. Now it's time to light this candle. We set up 2 targets exactly 7 yards, 21 feet from where we be shooting these at. Statistically speaking, most of your quote gunfights occur within that 20 foot or less range, so we set up that distance. Why 7 yards? Because if I'm this far from you, I'm probably not that much of a threat, even if I'm sprinting at you. And of course, me sprinting at you is not much of a threat. But 7 yards we feel like is a good distance. Let's give it a shot. We're at 7 yards again. We'll see how our accuracy is, how this thing's shipped from the manufacturer. Just aiming at the bullseye. All right, that's our first 8 from the STI. Looks like a decent grouping. I'm sure most of what you see there that's not in line is probably my fault. Let's see how the Rock Island does. All right, that's our 8 from the Rock Island. I'm going to take this camera off and go straight up there because I want you guys to see that we're being legit here. All right, this was our STI group, straight from the factory. All 8 really fell within this little area right here. Obviously, that's me. Low left, trigger pull, right-handed shooter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all right there. This is the Rock Island. Again, I think it's safe to say that I can attribute these guys right here probably to a trigger pull of a right-hand guy. Very low, but left a little bit. Definitely the Rock Island, which has adjustable sights, oddly enough, does not need adjusting. Notice the center line. I was aiming at this point on both targets. So notice that if I'm aiming at the center line, these 2 shots that are off and maybe 1 or 2 of these guys were slightly off center. Whereas the STI, which does not have adjustable sights, it appears that it lines up, oh good, maybe 3/4 of an inch left of center. So this would be the one that I wouldn't mind having adjustable sights on, and I don't have adjustable sights. But as you can see at 7 yards, neither one of these are very bad. Again, this, on the left is my STI 10mm, on the right is my Rock Island Armory 10mm. Both of them at 7 yards. I'll take that grouping any day. With a 10mm round, whether I'm shooting at polar bears or Thug Nasties, I'm pretty sure it's going to tear some limbs off or whatever you like. As you see, this is somewhat of a lifelike silhouette behind there, so it gives you a general idea on how close or how tight that particular group would be on a human torso if you were to have to defend yourself, of course. Polar bear would be a little bit bigger than that, probably as wide as this board just for one leg. But nevertheless, as you can see, both shoot nice tight groups. Again, you have to attribute this. You got to understand I'm shooting off of a bag, and I'm you know, I'm not exactly a crack shooter, so this is coming from a guy who's just a regular guy. I'm very satisfied with both of these groups. I'd take either one of these with me. Neither one of these makes me feel any better about the other at this point as far as defending myself or my family. Okay, that's going to about do it for today. We've got these 2 beautiful 10mm, this STI and this Rock Island Armory. I can tell you right now, from a value standpoint, I'd buy both of them. Neither one of them have given me any pause or any reason to feel like I would be overpaying for what I was getting for each gun. As you saw, they both were very accurate at 7 yards for what I need them to be. Again, I'm not going to be throwing lead down range much further than 7 yards anyway. Again, unless it's a polar bear. These two guys, they function good. As you saw, the STI has a much stronger recoil spring on it. That does tend to change the, I guess you could say, the physics of the actual recoil. The report is a little bit different as far as the recoil, sending that slide backwards with a heavier 25-pound recoil spring or 26-pound recoil spring, whereas the Rock Island has a much lighter recoil spring. It's much easier to activate the slide at that point, of course. But other than that, not a whole lot of differences. I will say this, one thing that I did notice, and this is not a knock, if you were to ask me to purchase both of these firearms right here based on looks, the grips on the STI are beautiful. These are just classic, nice looking. I love the little etched STI logo in the wood grips. These grips are VZ grips on the Rock Island Armory. They don't look bad, they're good looking grips, but I mean, you've got your classic look over here of the wood. But I will tell you this, after shooting them, I'd take these G10 grips all day long. The much more aggressive pattern on them for this type of recoiling firearm, to me, is somewhat necessary. It actually goes along with the whole reason why STI put these aggressive serrations on here and some of the front and back strap serrations that they put also, just like the front and back strap serrations and checkering on the Rock Island, to manage recoil. So to me, I would want grips that will enhance that as well, not just the frame and everything else being cut a certain way. The STI thinner grips, which I thought was kind of weird that they put thinner grips on an STI, is something that you want to get a better grip on. My hands are not super big, but they're big enough to where I want something to fill out my palm whenever I'm shooting it. I found that the slimmer grips were a little bit, not hard to hold on to, but you had more comfort with the fatter grip, the G10 grip on the Rock Island, but the aggressive cuts on the Rock Island grips is really what sold me on the overall grip. Again, you don't lose the handle on the STI by any stretch. It's maybe just more of a mental thing, more of a comfort thing. Not a knock on them, because again, if I were buying this one to put somewhere to look at, believe me, these grips are much better looking than the Rock Island grips. But functionally, I like the G10 grips. That's it for this segment of Gun Money. But next time, we're going to be making a little bit longer range shots, if nothing else, for a little bit more fun and a little bit more of a challenge to see how these two 1911 10mm do. We'll also be digging a little bit deeper into them, checking the trigger jobs on them, and seeing what the insides look like.
Hey, I'm Max Michelle, and I'm on Gun District. Why aren't you?